Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Historical Humans podcast. My name's Justin Woods, and I'm joined today by Aaron Gilpin and Colum Coleman. And today we are going to take it back. It's near Thanksgiving, and what better topic to talk about than the original Plymouth Rock? And I feel like I should add an asterisk there. Why? Well, let's dive into it.
Yeah, this is the original Plymouth Rock, Justin, as no other rock has been identified as Plymouth Rock.
Are you
Um,
telling me I could have literally just picked up
the-
any rock and be like, yeah, that's probably it?
Well, that's
Not
basically
necessary,
what they did.
not necessarily, but yeah. So Plymouth Rock is a wonderful little piece of granite located in the Pilgrim Memorial State Park of Massachusetts. uh,
That's wonderful.
Alongside the Mayflower 2 Museum, which is a lovely replica of the Mayflower, which brought the Pilgrims to Plymouth. Um, it is viewed by 1 million people every year. And let me tell you, it's not that spectacular, but it is does have a bit of a spectacular history and story behind it.
Would you say it's a nice boulder
Does it
Well,
rock?
and
puns
roll?
aside, gentlemen, as my completely impervious robot sense of humor continues on in the quest for knowledge. Uh, it is a simple glacial erratic boulder made of 600 million year old Dedham granite.
Ooh.
And before anyone thinks that is anything special, Dedham granite is a gray form of granite that is found in and around the city of Dedham, Massachusetts.
So, fun fact: there, if you go into geology and look at a bunch of rock names, that is a very common trend that happens across every sort of type of rock. Of like, here's a place name, and then the rock type. Like in Illinois, we have Galena Chert. Can you guess where a lot of it is found?
I'm gonna guess Galena, Illinois.
Yeah.
Funny enough, they also do the same thing with clay because where I did my one of my digs in Dorston, uh, Herefordshire, England, they call it Dorston clay because it's uniquely pinkish in hue.
Hmm.
Mhm.
God, it's almost like that's an easy naming convention.
Mm. Yes. Yes, it really is. And it's a very simple rock. There's not really a lot to look at. It was deposited at Plymouth around 20,000 years ago, and it's currently about 10 tons in weight. So it is significant. This is a hefty how should I put it? This is a hefty little creature here.
I wonder how. I mean, like you couldn't just pick it up. That's 10 tons. That's like what,
A
like five
truck.
Volkswagens?
Yeah, or like a one truck.
Yeah. This is the equivalent
Like a
of
semi
lifting
truck.
up one of those, of a truck or two. It's about, what would that make it? 2,000 pounds.
10
For the
tons?
average weight of an
A ton
American.
a ton is about 2,000 pounds, I think.
Yeah, so that's like what,
Yeah,
20,000?
20,000. Yeah, it's like as a ton is, yeah. I'm doing math in my head
So
with conversion charts I haven't looked at in forever.
in theory you could move it by truck then.
In theory, if you could get it, in theory, you could get, enough machines behind it and move it. You could. That is not
Wait,
recommended, and it is never going to happen in our lifetime for certain.
I can fix that. I can fix that.
That's
No.
oh god. And anyways, now how did they go about identifying this as being the Plymouth Rock?
Yeah, like
Pray tell.
how is it not like just any other rock? Like, could they not find another big boulder on the
Hey, guys,
Massachusetts
this one's
shoreline?
huge. I think this is it.
So, first and foremost, it is in the vicinity of the town of New Plymouth, which is the town founded by the people who got off the Mayflower, those lovely, lovely pilgrims,
You mean the Puritans?
responsible for so many things
Like
in
genocide?
Hey,
the history of this world. We
yes.
don't use the G word here.
We should.
We use population reallocation.
Or special military operation.
The allocation 6 feet under.
Hey, the smallpox blanket is the smallpox blanket.
That was like 200 years later, but still awful.
Also, there's a lot of different stories that originate. Like the first story of smallpox blankets was actually during a raid. The indigenous group was raiding a fort, and they didn't necessarily understand what an infirmary was, and took blankets from the infirmary that were used to house smallpox patients.
Yeah.
Sounds like Union. Sounds like the Republic. The not Republican, but well, I guess it would have been still Republic. Either way, sounds like pro-American propaganda to me.
Listen.
Either
I'm
way,
just talking the earliest historical account because I did actually have to look it up.
oh really?
Yeah. But with our lovely little Plymouth Rock, the Plymouth Rock was identified as the site of arrival of the Mayflower Pilgrims to the New World in 1620. It was identified 121 years after the arrival of the Pilgrims.
So we haven't fully established
the
U.S. yet.
No, the United States of America is about 35 years from revolution.
That's so weird to think about, like perspective wise. Like, so we have fully established British colonies who probably at least know about the story, right?
It is 156 years from the arrival of the Mayflower, and thus the first English colony in New England and the beginning of the British Empire in North America.
So it's like what?
That's really not
It's
that long of a time
156
frame.
years. It's 156 years from the Mayflower to the Revolutionary War.
That's not a long time for all the infrastructure and everything that was built.
That's still like 4 generations at least.
It was the 1700s. It was probably like 6 or 7 generations.
It's mass immigration.
Yeah.
Like imagine, like, yes, my great grandfather was here in the earliest part of the colonization process. Not that that's like necessarily a good thing, but also still like imagine that. Like we say our great great grandfather first came over during the mass Irish immigration to the US from Ireland as like a way to connect to Ireland, but we all know that's like late 1800s, and we really have no real connection to the Irish, but like that's still a long time for like an Americanish identity to develop in the colonies.
Well, and the thing with that too that's really important to highlight is you got to imagine that this was the big differentiation between them and the British, because they had come over to this area, to this, like you said, this American ideology, and then it got a chance to grow and kind of develop on its own. Because when you've got isolation between groups, you start seeing a lot of independent developments. Like at this point, there was already a differentiation in an American accent versus the British.
Not to mention there was from the get-go a political differentiation just in how the British Empire viewed what part of it you belonged to. You were a colonist in a colony. That meant that you were inherently something different from an Englishman in England. You were inherently othered by virtue of existing on this side of the ocean.
Othering is one powerful drug.
I'm not gonna lie. When I was in the UK, I was there for the British, or I was in the UK during our 4th of July, like our Independence Day celebration. And with a bunch of other Americans, we went and dumped tea into the harbor, which was the Manchester River. And all it consisted of was tea bags and tea that we brewed, and we just dumped it in there. So, like, we still very much have this attitude. It is very much fun.
Why did you have to be the worst American stereotype possible?
Yes.
Because we all agreed to do it. All 16 of us.
Oh my god. And that's how we started the war.
And
like we love the fact that we're not British. We love it so much. I feel like this is deep rooted during what I think, like in the notes, it says 1741.
Yeah, well, congratulations to you, Aaron. You were about 100 people short of the actual Tea Party.
I was close. I was.
So the
If
actual
only
Tea
I had
Party was 116 people, so,
Even though
slightly
America,
smaller celebration this year.
darn.
even though America is viewed as the Florida of the world, I
Are we
still
sure
think
about this?
yes,
Florida is the
100%.
Florida of the world.
No, I think America gets the same reputation that Florida gets in America. Like, people look at the U.S. and go, that's a trailer park and a half with all the drama and shit that happens.
But yeah.
Actually, you know what? You're not wrong. When I was asked about whether or not I grew up with guns in the household and I was okay with it, I'm like, yeah, why not? And every single British person looked at me with great concern. I'm like, yeah, I was like 10 years old firing a 12 gauge shotgun. And they were like,
I'm sharing the British people's concern at this point.
Well, like,
I've
when I went
I've seen too many people give their 3-year-old a handgun for their birthday.
yeah, I've seen a few of those.
Yeah.
There's a fly in here.
See, I didn't get a handgun. I just got a shotgun. No.
Listen,
My first gun was a rifle.
Oh my
Anyway.
God. All right, guns
Anyway,
aside,
so
that's the most American tangent you could go on.
141 years. 121 years, 1620 to 1741,
Yes.
from when the Pilgrims arrive to when we declare Plymouth Rock to be Plymouth Rock.
Okay.
And it is declared on the claims of exactly one man who was not there.
Okay,
What?
but he must have
This-
had some connection to it, right?
I'm diving into it, man. This man was named Thomas Fonts, and at the ripe young age of 94, he claimed that his father and several other Mayflower passengers had told him when he was a boy that that rock was the rock on which the first pilgrim set foot on America. One small problem with this. His father was not a pilgrim. His father arrived on a separate vessel 3 years later.
I mean, so here's two thoughts, because you could instantly dismiss this as being bullshit, because it's very much sounds like it.
Yep.
But the man was 94, which means he was born, what, 20...
He was born. He would have been born 27 years after the arrival of the first pilgrims.
So, in theory, if the pilgrims were in their 20s or 30s, they could be elders and be in their 50s or 60s as he grew up.
At least
Yes,
the youngest ones.
He would have. His father would have known pilgrims. He would have grown up with pilgrims as things. But keep in mind, this is a very old man who wasn't there, getting this from another old man who is dead and also wasn't there.
And
yeah, have you ever talked to
can-
some elderly folk?
they could get
Their
kind of
memory's not always there.
Yeah. You can argue a lot about oral history and oral tradition right here with this and whether or not you want to trust that, because that is really the only claim for Plymouth Rock being Plymouth Rock. The other thing that comes into factor here with the oral tradition is why Faust chose this moment to claim that Plymouth Rock was Plymouth Rock. And that is that the city of New Plymouth had decided that they were going to build a new wharf on the bay, and they were going to smash the rock.
So could this be one of the first instances of like environmental preservation, but through a historic lens? That's an interesting.
Possibly. It depends on whether or not you are choosing to say, I believe Thomas Faust.
I mean, like,
Or Fonts. I want to call him Faust so many times.
I mean, that's the thing. As archaeologists, we often sometimes, depending on the region, we have to rely on oral tradition. Even in the modern day, like one of the sites that I worked on was claimed to be the place where C.S. Lewis came up with the idea for Aslan in the Chronicles of Narnia. It was also claimed to be the court, like the inspiration for the court of King Arthur, because the place is called Arthurstone.
Mm-hmm.
And then even in Italy, you get like stories of like oh yeah, like this was here, this is supposedly here, landscape looked different, but the landscape might not have actually looked different. So yeah, you have to find a way to balance, like, you don't want to dismiss like local stories, especially if you're an outsider coming into an area. Even here in the United States, if you're going into a
Oh,
place like Plymouth,
Aaron, I could take you off from talk about the U.S. because that was actually a very big focal point of my thesis.
Yeah.
I
Was
mean,
talking
not just
about
like
oral
discussing like
histories.
native folklore, but like even other other like uh modern American cities, where if you enter specifically like Plymouth, if you were to question like Plymouth, you might like people will have some sort of generational story connecting themselves to Plymouth Rock. So, but like I'm sure there are,
Oh,
but
there are a number further down in our little notes.
yeah.
But like
So like
oral histories can really they can hold truth and they can do it in a way that is both factual and accurate. Like there were a number of stories that directly contradicted the US Army and their behaviors on a lot of indigenous lands. And there was one particular story that was written that had been carried down through about 4 generations of women, talking about how the soldiers basically killed the grandmother of the original storyteller when they were marching them off their lands onto the Great Sioux Reservation. And they went back and they were able to actually validate that through archaeology, which is kind of neat. Sorry.
but no, you're fine. But this also just serves as a foundational story for the US. I mean,
Yeah.
we often talk about the foundation of the US through the founding fathers, and it's in the name, but we, especially since, yeah, like we mentioned that it's close to Thanksgiving, the pilgrims landing at Plymouth Rock asking the natives for help, like it's part of that foundational story that we tell to children. I don't know if they still really tell children about it. I will be ruining it
They
for my
they
nephews this year, though.
they do. They do.
I
They
will
still
be.
it is still told probably almost exactly as you saw it in your time about how the pilgrims get off the boat. They don't know how to farm here. The Native Americans show them corn, give them food, and then the Native Americans and the pilgrims live happily ever after.
I would like to imagine
That
the
is that
pilgrims.
is the story.
You guys know the corn meme that's going on. I imagine the pilgrims were excited about corn.
Well, corn back
love
then
that.
looked a lot different too.
It's corn.
Yeah, and
Got the
But
they,
juice.
like going back
they,
to the oral story and the one person, sorry, just to kind of wrap this up,
No, you're
is
fine.
the area that I have doubt is it's one man, his age, the fact that the story hadn't permeated in other ways, because there are ways that this information can be disseminated amongst larger
and
groups.
and the one thing I'm going to say is the truth of Mr. Fonce's story is at this point in history, I'm going to say largely irrelevant because do you know who believed him? The
Everyone.
American nation
True.
God bless America.
for nearly 300 years.
We
People
are.
have believed this man to the point that it has become mythologized within the United States, and Plymouth Rock itself has become a symbol of the nation.
Well,
It is tied to the foundation of the United States by virtue of the fact of it being the first time actual English Americans came to this country and to this land. It is a representation. Its endurance as a stone is supposed to stand for the determination and fortitude of the early settlers. And it exists as an important historical site, not because of anything that it did in history, any initial history that was tied to it prior to Mr. Fonts, but because of the cultural mythos that grew out of it afterwards.
well, that's a very interesting thing, and it makes me think of my own personal experience. Like, I don't know how old you guys were, but I was in second grade the first time I heard the myth of the Pilgrims and the whole story behind the first Thanksgiving. Like, the Pilgrims were looking for a new place to live because England wasn't so friendly. So then they hopped on a boat and sailed away, and they were looking for a good place to land.
Wait, you got the England wasn't happy part? Wow, that's like way more historically accurate than I got.
I didn't even get that. I was in kindergarten when I first because they okay, so this is 2000. This is like 2002, or not 2002. It's probably like 2002, 2003. Um, we got to choose whether or not we wanted to dress up as natives or pilgrims, and the
We did
kindergartners
headdresses.
would do a procession through the hallway into the cafeteria where we got
Yep.
a Thanksgiving dinner, which
Yep.
consisted of turkey, green beans, and and we were essentially told the story of the pilgrims. We got the part where they came to the new world, and the natives helped them, and the pilgrims shared what food they did have left, and the natives shared food with them for a bountiful harvest,
Mm-hmm.
and they lived
Yep.
happily ever after.
Yep.
I
Yep.
didn't get any of the part where England wasn't friendly to
Yeah,
them.
Yeah,
no,
no.
no, I didn't get. We did. Mine did get to go a little bit darker than that, in the sense that when we were divided up into pilgrims and as they were called at the time, Indians, the side with the Indians wore headdresses and had to take their shirt off, stomp, and do the Braves tomahawk chop chant.
Oh my god.
See,
That was their part.
we
I
did
didn't
the
even do that.
headdresses and we
Yeah.
acted it out. So like some kids
Cardboard
made the
headdress.
the cardboard
Yeah.
headdresses, but then for the pilgrims, we made cardboard top hats with buckles. And then we held a whole play and we invited a bunch of parents and everything, and like there was a whole show, a whole performance of little second graders doing oh yeah, it was bad. That's what we did.
God.
Yeah, I just remember that we were segregated into our little groups, and you were kept on opposite sides of the classroom the entire time we were in costume. You did not sit next to an Indian when you were a pilgrim.
Jesus Christ. Actually,
That's the part I remember most. And I'm just saying, like,
you know what?
that's weird. We're supposed to be making friends.
You know what? Now that I think about it, every depiction always showed pilgrims on one side and natives on the other,
Yeah.
Yeah.
ever
Bunch of-
intermingling.
Yep. But
Oh my god.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
symbology behind
Well-
that, though, of two different groups coming together
Yeah,
at the
it's
same
the-
table. There's a lot of
it's
iconography.
the
in that.
merger. It's the same thing. It's supposed to be like emulating a marriage almost,
It's
where
like-
the groom side is on one half of the room and the bride side is on the other half.
It's like the Last Supper. Do you really think all 13 people sat on one side of the table? Like,
It would have been hilarious though.
like, guys, why are we all facing this empty space? There's just a
That's
camera crew.
There's just Leonardo da Vinci is there. Who's that weird Italian man? Hold still.
Hold still.
I wouldn't be
He'll
surprised
go
if he was a
away.
time
if
traveler.
we don't move, he can't see us. And Italian's vision is solely based on movement, guys. Don't you know?
All right. To come back
There's your
to
Family Guy reference.
Plymouth Rock, and as Aaron has gone through his epiphany, we're gonna go now into the mythology of Pilgrim Rock, of Plymouth Rock and the Pilgrims, and sort of see all the wonderful stories that build up through this. I've laid it out as best I can in our notes as a historical timeline of some very not historical things. But December 26, 1620, as we have stated, the Mayflower and its pilgrims arrive at Plymouth Rock, where they establish the town of New Plymouth, which is the first permanent European settlement in New England. Congratulations, guys. You achieved colonialism.
I'm the rowing one.
With for the U.S., that's like a leveling up. That's you hear the Mario sound.
No, for the United States of America, that's the Steam achievement for completing the tutorial.
Yeah.
It was a pretty rough tutorial then. Given the way of Roanoke.
Yeah. Listen, there's some failures. It's one of those tutorials where you're forced to fail the first few times so that you understand what losing looks like.
Oh, you mean like Europa Universalis 4?
Oh
We're
god.
not doing that. We're not going back to that game ever.
Colonial Simulator,
Yeah.
2024.
Fun fact: Plymouth Rock, as the site where the Pilgrims first landed in the New World, is inherently not true because the Pilgrims didn't make landfall at Plymouth. They first made landfall at Cape Cod,
Oh my god.
but they decided that Plymouth had a better harbor, and so they moved there.
Oh, okay. So
So
it's
it-
like
it-
when you show up to a place, you're like, man, this place kind of sucks, but over there is kind of better.
See,
Yeah.
I think of it like a parking spot. Like you park way far back and you see someone pull out and you go, actually, I think I'm going to park up there.
I do that in the student parking all the time. Like I'll park farther in the back and then I'll see a car move out of the way, like further up. And I'm like, if I'm like still in the car, I'll be like, actually, I'm gonna go take that spot now.
Yeah.
See, I just walk as penance for all my sins.
Yeah, they just that's the beauty of it. It's like even if Plymouth Rock is the site where the Pilgrims first came ashore at Plymouth to establish New Plymouth, it's not the first time they were in America.
Hey,
They
this
just
place looks familiar.
It's still Massachusetts, unfortunately.
we have myth number one, and this is where they came ashore.
Do you think the indigenous had like a proto-Bostonian accent?
Are you telling me? Are you telling me
Yeah.
they just showed up and go, "Oh, what? Like,
Wait,
what
I'm
you
sorry.
doing here?"
This
Yeah,
is
what are you doing here?
Massachusetts. This is Massachusetts. I'm trying to remember which tribes that would be.
It'd be the Massachusetts tribe.
Massachusetts. Yeah, but like, I keep it's Massachusetts.
Oh, there's another one. What? There's another
there's
one.
like
I'm
the
thinking
Narragansett.
Iroquois and Cree aren't quite there.
Yeah, no, because Iroquois is farther north.
Yeah, Iroquois is
northwest.
too far north and Cree is too
Like,
far
South.
Yeah, it's
south.
it starts with an S.
There's a million.
There's a lot,
million
but the Massachusetts were the predominant.
No,
Yeah,
it starts with a P. Actually, is it the Paraguay? Is that how you pronounce it? Paraguay? Oh God, it's gonna bother me now.
But yes, there were a lot of tribes.
Yeah,
like I wonder if
there
they're
were.
just like, hey, what you doing here?
Wampanoag.
Oh God,
Wampanoag.
yeah.
That's what I'm trying to think of. Wampanoag. There we go. We got there
Wampanoag, I'm
eventually.
living
Wampanoag.
here.
We apologize. Took us a minute.
I'm Wampanoag.
Oh, it's Paraquat tribe.
yeah. There's a
Paraquat.
lot.
Yep, there we
But
go.
they're in Connecticut. That's what I was
There-
thinking
yeah,
about.
man, Paraguay Connect. There we go. There we go. We found. We worked our way through the wall of proper nouns to find it.
Wow. But yes, I wonder if they had a proto-Bostonian accent, like.
Yeah.
I like to think so.
So now we're going to come to myth number 2. The Pilgrims kept written records, 2 of which have survived to this day.
How?
The first of them is the personal accounting of William Bradford, governor of Plymouth.
That's a pretty reputable position. You'd have to be in
Who-
power.
Who wrote of Plymouth Plantation, during which he lays out the entirety of the early settlement of this colony. And nowhere in it does he ever once mention a large rock.
What does he mention?
The plantation.
It's mostly the establishment of the colony, and this went there, and so was established here, and this town expanded here, and this winter we did this.
Oh, so like city planning mostly stuff.
It's basically his account. It's more or less how should I put it? It's somewhere above a diary, but somewhere below an actual like novel.
Kind of like just a record keeping book.
A
really.
report.
Yeah, it's a record keeping book. It's a largely historical document.
That's my favorite part about like a lot of people think like historians are reading like epic narratives that like all look like the Iliad and the Odyssey, but in reality it's just record keeping books that says on this day Dave brought 1,200 bushels of corn to the market.
I paid him 2 gold.
Then there is, if I understand it correctly, the more stylized and therefore presumably readable, Mort's Relation by Edward Winslow, Another Pilgrim, which also never once mentions any rock.
Maybe they just didn't see it.
How do you miss a 40-ton boulder?
I mean, it was there. It was in the
Yep.
Plymouth area. They must have encountered it at some point.
Yeah, but there was also like there was also a bunch of trees, but the trees didn't get like iconographized. Is that the word?
Well,
Yeah.
see, trees don't last forever.
Quantified?
Rocks do.
Some trees can last forever.
No, you guys are thinking of diamonds.
No, that's true. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
like there could have just been a really big tree. We could have had Plymouth tree.
Okay, but ranting for just a half a second here is how many historical documents use like relative things like that as locations, especially old archaeological reports. I had to go through a bunch of reports from the 20s and 30s that were like, ah, yes, the site began 20 feet from the big oak tree. Look around, I'm in a cornfield. Like, what the fuck? Like, where is everything?
Yeah.
No, that's my favorite thing.
These-
We had to do the same thing at one of my sites. It's like, yeah, in this area, this is like the rough guesstimation, and there's like the tree line, and you're like, are we using the same units of measure? Have like meters changed in the last 20 years? Because
Yeah.
that's not the tree line anymore.
Me with one of mine, just half a mile northeast of the river. There's no water here. It's all fields.
The river has just been redirected.
It just dried up and was replaced with more bean fields. And I'm like,
I mean, that's a thing with the Mississippi and with the Nile, where the Nile has like, where both have like undergone like serious redirectional changes, whether man-made or natural. So like, there's like a little side note. There's a theory that the Nile River actually ran closer to the pyramids of Giza, and they would have floated some of the blocks downriver. It's a controversial theory right now. Like that's an actual
Anything other than
controversial theory in
aliens
archaeology.
is controversial.
don't start. We don't use the Allen word here.
But like I find that like that's always funny to me. It's like, yeah, there's a river here, and you're just looking around, like this is all corn.
Yeah, it's like, yep.
Yeah,
Where was the river?
So
Yeah.
it got very difficult for that, and like trying to, especially archaeology, when you know there's a site somewhere and you know that people have explored it before, and yet you can't. I've had a lot of issues trying to map old sites in like GIS software, which is mapping like geography software basically.
Yes, it is. Yep.
And it's a hellscape when you don't know where everything is specifically and you have to try and geolocate.
Geographic information systems.
Yes.
It's even worse when you have to go out into the field, because I did a little GIS work and we had to go look for old Italian like city sites. And it's like, yeah, it's supposed to be on top of this ridge. We don't know how to get there. And then when we finally got up there through like this very sketchy, like we plowed the way through up this hill that's like a 90-degree like what's the word, like a
Incline.
incline that was originally formed by lava flow, so it's not very stable. We got up to the very top and we're standing in the middle of someone's wheat field, and they're like, yeah, this is where the city was, and we're like,
oh.
right? It's like, yeah, there's a bit of a wall over there, and we just look across, they're like,
yeah.
Pesky Europeans, they'll farm anything.
You want a nightmare? Take relative elevation in a forest.
Dear
You got
God.
no line of sight, and you can't just chop everything out of your way.
No, it's even weirder when you realize those trees are roughly 50 years old, so you know they're not supposed to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but then you still have to take into account for that.
But,
can I give you guys the nightmare example real quick?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Then we go back to Plymouth.
My first field school, one of the first components we did was trying to locate the old sites using the old maps, which were, again, using old woods, except that part of the forest had been clear-cut and logged, and now had new growth forest and had elevation changes relative to the lake that's shoreline is eroding.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so it was just a combination of all the worst parts.
So literally, whatever trees that were mentioned are no longer there, and if there are trees, they're not in the
There's-
location where they're supposed. Where
But
you
we are of course not dealing with trees here. We're dealing with a rock, which is not mentioned in any of the written records
And rocks
of the
don't
pilgrim.
move.
Yep.
usually Death
Until-
Valley would like to have a
Oh,
word.
Until- Until we come along, they don't move.
Oh god.
Uh, which is
what
what's
happened?
which is what's going to happen next. So 1741 comes along, and Mr. Fonts comes and makes the claim that this is where the pilgrims arrived, and honestly, his claim is accepted. He is an old man. He's an elder in the town of New Plymouth, and he worked as a cleric for the church. So he was a clerk in the church in a puritanical town
A
in
man of
the
faith.
mid 1700s. So basically, his word is law.
God damn it!
And people believed him. Immediately following this, we get a number of very interesting legends attached to Plymouth Rock.
Oh boy.
The first and most famous is what I can only describe as a Shakespearean romance.
Hold
Or-
on.
Or, yeah, that's right. There's a romance centered around this rock.
Oh Jesus.
It goes as follows. There's a claim that John Alden, who was a colonist and a pilgrim, is the first person to set foot off of the Mayflower onto Plymouth Rock. And he is in love with another colonist, a woman named Priscilla Mullins, who, because of this myth, is the only woman on the Mayflower for whom we still have a name.
Oh my god.
The
The rest were erased from history,
Go
Ooh.
figure.
and we don't know who they were. But she survives because of this. And the story goes that he set foot, and the first thing his foot hit when he made land was this rock. And there it is that he's courted Priscilla Mullins, not for himself, but on behalf of a friend of his, only for he himself to fall in love with her, and her with him. And thus we have the early Shakespearean love triangle take shape,
Jesus.
which concludes with the two of them basically abandoning their third wheel friend and getting together, and she becomes Priscilla Alden.
Oh jeez.
Hey, your buddy's kind of a nerd. Let's blow this place. Let's get out of here.
But there you go. Shakespearean romance immediately centers itself around this rock. Now,
It would have been more on the
Shakespeare-
nose if they got married in
Yeah.
front of the rock.
Or
the
on it.
Shakespearean romance, completely made up. However, Priscilla Mullins, real woman. John Alden, real man. Both were on the Mayflower. Both got married to one another.
Oh shit! Really?
Yep. She became Priscilla Alden. She is the only woman for whom we have a name. Everyone else is just simply recorded as so-and-so and wife, if they are recorded at all.
Oh, so and
I
so
mean-
and wife.
Yep. That sounds
Yep.
pretty 1600s England for
Yep.
them.
That again, we have exactly two written accounts, both made by prominent Protestant men. You can decide exactly what they thought was relevant.
Not the women.
Fools. It's never the women.
Yep. And then,
Okay, but also,
yep. Go for it, Aaron. Go for it.
so they moved them. They moved the rock at some
Yep.
point, right?
Yes, so that is our next point, actually. We skip ahead to 1774. Revolution is in the air. Discontent between the colonies and England has begun. And at this point, Plymouth Rock is split in two. This comes about as an attempt by the people of Plymouth in an effort to reconnect with their history and their roots and their ties with England and just their ties to this land.
By splitting
To
it
move-
in two.
No, to move the rock in its entirety from the shoreline to the center of town by literally just lassoing a rope around it and tying that rope to as many horses as they could get.
I mean, I guess they couldn't exactly hook it up to a truck.
Yeah,
No.
they couldn't like haul it out or grab a crane or
No.
anything, so they just
The-
like whipped a bunch of horses. Like, let's go.
Now, hindsight being 2020 here, the rock, predictably under this horizontal force, shears off and shatters in two.
Oof.
So,
Yep.
so that's how we lose half a rock.
This is how we have half the rock.
halved.
The top half is then dragged several miles into town, where it's deposited outside the town meeting house. At which point, the people of New Plymouth take the sign that the rock has split as a divine omen from the Lord Almighty, that just as the rock has split, so too must these colonies split from England.
Oh, so they really thought this
And
was
Plymouth goes down hard on the Yankee Doodle Dandy train, as Massachusetts and Connecticut turn out to be some of the most anti-English states.
So this was their burning bush, so to speak.
This is their divine portent. This is their
their
divine
splitting of the
portent
rock.
from God, also known as they were being idiots.
I mean, I guess whatever fuels the wheels.
To
of
be
revolution.
fair, at this point in time, it really, I don't know if it was necessarily a divine like reasoning,
Dominance.
or if they were just like, you know, we want to do this. This is just a way we can rile it up. Let's package it up nicely.
The movement of the rock in the first place was politically motivated. I will say that.
Exactly.
Or-
There we go.
It's always
The attempt to move the rock was very politically motivated, and so is everything else that follows.
Okay.
with the American Revolution. You don't say.
Yeah.
Wow.
How much of it's actually
Yep.
politically motivated, not true, genuine Americana?
Fun fact:
Service
the rock
is all.
sits in the center of town
Mhm.
for about 60 years until 1834, when it is decided that this rock, which has been sitting in front of the town, and people have been taking chunks of it for just the sake of having a souvenir of, you know, the rock of the founding of America, because America has completely bought into the mythos of Plymouth Rock at this point.
To be fair, that also happened at Stonehenge of people chipping away.
Yep.
God damn it!
It is
people.
it is decided that it would be safer for the rock if they were to put it on a cart, move it through town, and deposit it outside of the Plymouth Museum.
It belongs in a museum.
Why can't people just
Guess
they would
what
ask the
they
Rock
did-
what he wanted to do?
Guess what they did not do when loading the rock onto this cart?
Secure it properly.
They did not. And it appears that the cart was more of a flat bed than anything with, you know, a hatch like a truck would.
Oh no.
So halfway down the cobble road, the
No.
rock falls out of the cart, and a massive crack, vertical instead of horizontal, cuts across it.
Don't.
And this is seen as a portent that war is returning to America.
You've got to be kidding me.
And after the 1860s, it is hailed for all of history as a divine warning that the Civil War was coming and to prepare for the United States to nearly be torn in two.
You've got to be kidding me.
Wow.
Has anyone seen the Plymouth Rock lately? Is there a crack in it right now? It feels like it. It feels like it's been cracked.
No, we fused it with cement.
We glued
Shortly.
it back together. We're
We fused it
good.
with cement. It will never break again.
We've rebuilt it. We've made it stronger than before.
Yeah, there is a lot of things that have been built on, into, and around this rock to make sure it never cracks again.
So it can't be used as a symbol of civil unrest.
More or less. Because well,
Like
That's it.
I need a pickaxe, guys. Hold on.
yep. In the let's see, where should we go from here?
Fine, Providence.
We're gonna go to the Badalchian, because that's a fun word. So a Badalchian is basically how should I put it? It's just 4 pillars and a little shrine roof that you use to just shelter things from wind and rain and other stuff. It is also most commonly used as a Christian religious symbol for the housing of holy relics.
You gotta be fucking kidding me.
They're the Badalchians are typically beautiful, ornate little houses, little semi shrines in which you put idols of saints and God. This is constructed during the Civil War over the part of the rock that has been left on the wharf.
There's a lot to be said about that. There is a lot.
It's been about 120 years since we first established this rock as something important, and people are worshiping it.
Of course, that is the American way. You must worship everything.
Yep.
Good. You know what?
Praise be him.
This Badalchian was designed and built by Hammett Billings, and it took him 8 years to do it. And the hope of this was actually something we can get behind. The hope was that by putting this here, it would encourage the preservation of the rock. As people had been going down to the wharf when they couldn't get at the one in the museum to steal chunks of the rock for their own homes and to say, I have, a 10-pound rock from Plymouth Rock.
I mean,
It was designed to shoo people away.
I imagine that it was also like some very poorly thought out, like roadside souvenir. Like, I went to Plymouth Rock and all I got was a piece of Plymouth Rock.
I mean,
con men have existed since the beginning of humanity, so I am certain there is someone selling just random stones in Plymouth claiming they're part of the rock.
I mean, they're doing that with the Berlin Wall.
Yeah, but the Berlin
We're not trying to preserve the Berlin Wall. We shattered that thing on purpose.
We do have some portions that are preserved because of the artwork.
Yeah, there are a few that are preserved in museums. I think there's the News Museum in Virginia has a chunk of it.
Either way, well, I do appreciate the preservation aspect. Yep. There's something to be said about American Protestantism being a mistake like this.
Also, it's very interesting because this was the piece that was outside the town hall, right?
No, this is the piece that was left on the wharf. The piece that was outside the town hall cracked on its way to being placed in a museum to protect it from all the people that were chiseling it.
Oh, okay. So that one's still in the museum.
So this is now building a shrine over the part that was left on the wharf to protect it from all the people that are chiseling it, in the hopes that if you see religious iconography over something, you do not just reach in and grab it.
That's fair.
It does not work.
I'll say that it doesn't work for saints nowadays, and it didn't work for saints in like the 1300s. They still stole pieces of saint bones.
Yeah. It does not work.
It's really weird that Saint John has 20 fingers.
Yeah. Yeah. That's more from the desire of every place to have a piece of the saint and just cutting fingers off of other dead people to claim it's theirs. He has 20 fingers. 11 of them are index. So,
yeah,
he doesn't even. We don't even have his whole hand. We can't even make his whole 2 hands out of the 20 fingers.
My favorite thing. It's my favorite thing.
Oh, it had to come from somewhere. 1880, guys. The upper and lower parts of the rock are reunited under this Badalchian, and it is at this point that we make the oh so brilliant decision to brand the rock.
Oh,
perfectly etched.
We chisel the numbers 1620 into the side of the rock.
USA.
Because it's not ours if we haven't graffitied it yet.
You know what? I'll give them props because, first of all, discovering this rock, breaking it off, having the top portion separated for like 150 years, and then trying to find the original spot with the upper half, with the bottom, to reunite the lower and upper half, either through documents that we just no longer have or just through oral tradition. is a feat upon itself.
Also-
I think at this point it's one of those things like everyone knows where it is. It's if you're in Plymouth and you don't know where the other half of the rock is, you're not from Plymouth.
I also just want to point out, and we talked about this prior to the show, but you're telling me that you could take something out of a museum and return it to the place it comes from.
Yes, you can. You can very much do that.
Paging
wanna
the
tell the
British
British
Museum.
Museum
And fun fact, this is the only time Plymouth Rock will be transported without it shattering.
Hey, no war. Let's go.
For
Yeah.
now.
1921, no war. 18 years later.
Dun dun dun.
Gee, I wonder what war
Yeah.
happens 18 years later.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a different thing. This was 1880. 1921 is the next time something happens to the rock.
Yes, exactly. Wasn't
This time we decide that, you know what, this is America. We really need to replace this old Badalchin with something less religious.
Oh,
So
yeah.
what do we do? Well, it's the tricentenary observance of the Pilgrims. It means it's been 300 years since they came ashore, and we're throwing a party. And so for this party, the city of Plymouth decides to give Plymouth Rock a fancy new house. They proceed to give it a portico that is 2 levels so that no one can reach down and touch it again.
I like how we can house a rock, but not our homeless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is a. Oh, and the best part is, at this point, it's full Yankee capitalism, because we hire out to a to an architectural firm called McKim, Mead and White to do this. This isn't individual artists doing things anymore. No, this is full corporate America, baby.
Oh, great. Oh, yeah, it is the 1920s. Great Gatsby and all.
1921.
Yeah.
Here
Roaring
we come.
20s. It'll
Nothing
never
bad
end.
is going to happen at the end of this decade. No, sir, no way.
Yeah. Not at all. So the lower level completely encloses the rock on all 3 sides, except for the side that faces the ocean, so no one can get at it from the land. And the side that faces the ocean is given a steel grate, so that you can kind of see it, but not get at it. Then there is a second level you can climb up onto and view it from above, looking down through the portico.
Ah.
And it is safely out of reach, because if you were to attempt to get to it, you would have to jump over the railing, at which point I'm pretty sure the same rules as hopping the railing at the zoo apply, and the park ranger can just shoot you.
So
No, they usually shoot the gorilla.
that's only if there's a child involved. No,
Rip her off,
actually, there was a case of graffiti that took place there only a couple of years ago. Someone graffitied onto the rock. So it's possible, but
It's possible, but it takes clear and blatant effort to the point at which you know you are committing a criminal act.
a
Like, I
felony.
imagine the effort is equivalent to when people use like those overpasses where they graffiti on the side of the. I feel like that's the equivalent effort.
When I was a kid, I couldn't figure out how they did it.
Me neither. But you know what? I feel like that's the equivalent effort.
Yeah, but it's one of those it's one of those things where it's like, it's a clear criminal act to do this, and the major threat to this rock for the last 100-some years at this point has been antiquarianism and souvenir hunting. People who think, I'm doing no harm to the rock if I take a chunk out of it.
Yeah, it's
Which
not,
you're
doesn't make a
literally
difference.
carving a chunk out of something. When on earth has that never done harm? Oh, I'm not hurting the Mona Lisa. I'm just taking this part of the painting.
Or I like the logic of, well, everyone else is doing it, so I want to, because then there's not going to be enough rock left for everyone. I want my piece of it.
Yep.
I want my piece. Well, you know what?
It is a stupid idea. It is bad.
Mind.
Do not do it. This is
If
not
you
how we
touch
do this.
Take part.
Yep.
Oh wow, that's the nicer route. I was gonna go with a beating stick.
Once again, you've hopped the portico, Park ranger gets to shoot you.
You know what? I can agree with this. You like I imagine that should be applied to
This
all.
This is America. The park rangers are in those nests not to watch for forest fires, but to snipe at the people.
Man,
The whole
Park
forest
ranger-
just has like armed guards.
The park ranger is in a ranger tower with a 50 caliber sniper rifle. He is an extra.
I've got my sights on a litterer.
It's one of those ones that are so high powered they have to have a second guy there to call out the mass so he knows how to adjust his aim.
Exactly, like he is clearly a mile away. You can't see him, and by the time you hear the gunshot, it's too late.
There's a 7-mile-per-hour crosswind.
Yep.
Like that is exactly how we should protect all sites. Like, like I remember a few years back, they talked about, there was on the news where teenagers defaced like paintings made by Native Americans like roughly like almost 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
That's exactly what should have happened. Somebody should have been there in a tower with a sniper rifle, saw those teenagers, and then just offed them on sight.
All you hear is just the clicking of the old school bolt action. Just
As fun as this is, the time has come to acknowledge that we as historical humans do not condone violence in any form.
However, we strongly extra do not condone defacing any sort of indigenous artworks or historical monuments.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do not go souvenir hunting by taking chunks out of the things you are there to enjoy.
Or Aaron will
and
be there
diminish
with
the value for everyone.
See, our care about not committing acts of violence is below the other one about
below the preservation of the cultural and historical knowledge and heritage of this world.
At that point, you are acceptable.
Which, speaking of preservation, in 1989, they actually did go through restoration work, and they decided to seal a couple of cracks on the rocks.
Yep. They fused the two halves back together, resealed the cracks, and now it sits there at the 1620 prominently displayed towards all the people up there.
Hey,
I
it
guess
just got tattooed. It had a rebellious phase.
Yeah.
I guess they didn't want the crack to symbolize Reagan's presidency.
Oof.
That's
they were just cracks in democracy, not in the rock.
That's just dark. That's
Well,
just
yes, that's where it started, Justin. The cracks in our democracy starts
that's
with
too
Reagan.
soon. That's too soon. We've got people who were alive then.
And they should be in homes now.
So, how does the rock look today? Like, what's going on with the rock in 2022?
Well, presently the rock is about 10 tons in weight, out of what was an estimated minimum of 40 tons when the pilgrims arrived.
See, now
that's a lot of weight.
Someone should try and track down all the different pieces and just re-glue it.
Just FBI raids into people's homes.
That is too many. They are literally scattered throughout this country in thousands upon thousands upon thousands of homes, institutions, and societies.
I found my new life mission.
Well, like, what else are we using our tax money for?
Yeah,
nothing important. We're not
helping the public.
Healthcare. Why not raid homes across America to put back together?
Yeah.
Just put the ATF to good use.
Yep.
Exactly. They're not doing anything good.
Yep. And fun fact too, with just how daunting of a task this is, 40 tons is the minimum estimate for how much this rock would have weighed at the start. The upper ceiling is approximately 200 tons.
Okay,
that's a lot to live.
So we're either at 1/4 the original size, or 0.5% of what used to be there.
Okay, so what we should do is we should try and find some large chunks first.
Well, we do know the whereabouts of exactly 2 detached pieces for certain.
Oh, perfect.
They are housed in a museum. In fact, they're housed in the museum of this very nation. They are housed in the Smithsonian.
So we do an ATF raid in the Smithsonian.
We do not. You cannot ATF the Smithsonian. It's the Smithsonian.
So what we need to do is
sends things.
We need to national treasure those rocks.
Oh,
yeah.
Nick Cage, where are you at?
The specifics of this is they are specifically held in the National Museum of American History. That's right. They are not in a natural museum. They are in a history museum.
I mean, that's fair.
For something that is literally just a piece of rock, no carving, no inscription, no anything. That's very impressive.
I mean, what do you think about it? Stonehenge, just a bunch of rocks stacked together, but that's considered
and they've all been moved at this point.
Yeah, so it's national history in that space. It's like it's an example of natural history becoming culturally significant.
Yeah,
a nation state. So that's an example of it.
Well, and that wraps a beautiful bow on that.
And I will say the largest piece that the Smithsonian has is 100 pounds. It's the larger of the two pieces. And they got it from the Plymouth Historical Society when that society decided to sell some of their many, many chunks of this rock that they possess. It is unclear to me whether the Historical Society took their chunks from the rock itself, or whether they just simply, as a historical society, acquired them from people who had.
I'm gonna guess a little bit of both.
I think realistically, I think it was probably the second option, because historical societies, both local, regional, and state, people will just drop shit off every day. Like,
that's true.
God, I can't tell you the amount of times people walked into my office at my last job and just had a box of like artifacts and were like, "Can you tell me what this is?" It's like, well, firstly, where did you find it? And their reaction told me a lot of things. Like, they'd either go, "Well, I found it," or like, "I don't know," and they get really shifty about it. It's like, okay, you're looting something. And then secondly, it's like, okay, my father gave it to me and I have no clue what it is. And then the second question to that is it valuable?
Yeah, it's always that question.
It's always, how much it's people think your office is Pawn Stars, let's be honest.
Yeah, I am not an appraisals expert. I am not here to appraise your looted artifacts.
Mm-hmm. And the answer to that question, what is it worth? It's all worthless. Monetary wise, because the fact that you have removed it from any sort of context, whether it was you personally or your dad, your grandpa, whatever, it is now basically only good in a comparison set where it's like, okay, it kind of looks like this, so that's all we got, and then it'll be put in a box forever because that's all it's good for. Because you removed it from the context.
Yes, archaeology is all about the context. We care about what the artifacts are in the context that they're in.
But in context, we mean the dirt.
All right,
whatever part of the dirt it comes from is most important.
All righty.
But yes, so there we have it. We've got the rocks, we've got Plymouth, we've got a lot of things going on, and it's kind of interesting because it's an oral tradition that very likely isn't true. But that doesn't matter.
What matters mattering in America? Are you kidding me?
What matters is that for nearly the last 300 years, people have believed it, and they have built their lives on it, and it has become a part of the culture of this nation, which is really interesting because it's story creating truth instead of truth creating stories.
So essentially, it doesn't really matter if it's true or not. Essentially, it's become so ingrained in the culture that it's become significant, even if it's not 100% accurate.
Yeah, it's like just to compare it a little bit to was it the Midnight Ride? Red coats are coming, all of that. That's truth creating story. That ride actually happened, and Edgar Allan Poe wrote about it. Wrote a semi-fictionalized accounting of that night, and the truth created a story, and the myth spread.
I didn't know Edgar Allan Poe did that.
Yeah, the I can't remember the name. The Edgar Allan Poe's sister was, I think, either dating the brother of or dating the guy who did the Midnight Run.
Paul Revere?
Dating Paul Revere. They were a courting. God. Edgar Allan Poe's relative was a courting Paul Revere. So Paul Revere got his own damn poem.
I forgot. Yeah, because I don't exactly equate those two time periods of being so close. Because it's like 1830s, right? With Edgar Allan Poe?
Edgar Allan, yep. The Midnight Ride was the Revolutionary War. Edgar Allan Poe, Edgar Allan Poe, was was the 1800s to 1850.
Yeah, that.
Yeah,
Which Paul
1830.
Revere
Yeah, it would
died
have
in
been.
1818.
Yeah,
So he probably was like courting his son or grandson.
yeah. It was court. It was basically a Poe was courting a Revere. Is the gist of what I understand it to be.
Because he did own a silver shop, right? Like a silversmith. So like that would have probably
Yeah.
passed out. So yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Basically, a Poe was courting a Revere, and therefore Poe wrote about the Midnight Ride. And truth, the ride happened. Story, it's now mythologized in American history as this grand event.
God, it's so weird to wrap my mind around that those two are that close.
And Plymouth Rock is pretty similar. You know, it's just the inverse. There's the story that they landed there, and then there's all this truth, all this history that comes built out of the story, all these things that people did because of the story.
Damn.
But I think that should be a good point for us to wrap up on and end today's episode.
Yeah.
This was a fun one.
It got a little tangential. It got a little off the rails, but I think it's time to pull this train.
I think we threw enough rocks back at each other to get this back in. We threw some Plymouth rocks to get each other back
next
on topic.
week, Dwayne the Plymouth Rock Johnson versus Dwayne the Rock Johnson.
It's just Dwayne the Rock Johnson's clone with a pilgrim hat.
Yes.
That was such a bad joke that you guys got hooked on at the start of this session before we even began our recordings of the night. God. Next time on Historical Humans for our podcast, we do in fact have our 1 year season. It's going to have been a whole year of Historical Humans. So thank you all for making the journey with us. And we will, of course, end this wonderful 1 year on something of a very interesting note. We will be ending it on the Gilded Age.
Oh, goody.
You know, there's a lot of implications there of our first year as a podcast and then ending it off with the Gilded Age. Did we think this through?
Yes, because I'm the one who handled this part of the schedule. I'm the one who put that on the docket.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
I am all about the symbology and gambling that we wouldn't make it this far. So, woo.
Hey, I was right about that part. We lasted. Which, on that terrible bombshell, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to leave a like down below. Drop a comment if there's something that you would want to see. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on our future episodes. We've made it so far. Stick with us for year number 2. Thank you guys for watching.
If you don't hit that bell, I'll be very sad and you won't miss our season
You'll make him
finale.
cry.